Hello, welcome to the 5th video of the Revit series. I was just looking over the syllabus and it would appear that we have 2 weeks left after this week. Actually, that's including this week. So we have next week and then a week after that, so 2 more weeks of Revit, and then we start talking about 3D Studio Max, and we'll have seven videos for 3D Studio Max as well. So your first midterm is on March the 1st, so you might want to write that down. That is also when it's marked for your first project to be due. I think we talked about the project a little bit here and there. We'll have to touch base this week with the project and where that stands. Okay, so this week we were going to be talking about family types. I also wanted to talk about wall types and creating our own walls. I want to look at importing and exporting information, and I also want to talk about file types. So a lot to cover. First thing I'm going to do while I mention file types is pull this up. When we look at the file types here for Revit, you'll see that there's one file type here with no numbers. This is the actual file that we're looking for. These other files you'll see accumulating represent auto saves. So these numbers represent automatic saves. So whenever you submit a file or use a file, the file without the number after the dot extension is the file that you want to use. These other files are, like I said, they're just auto saves, and you always hope that you never have to use these. So this is the file that we're actually looking for. Now last week we left off on this refrigerator, and it is a fine refrigerator. It would work perfectly if this was the only refrigerator in the world. However, that's not the case. So the way that you get around having multiple instances of one object is through type properties and type parameters. And that's one of the wonderful things about Revit, is the ability to adjust families and components with parametric data. And we've already used this in several ways. You've already used it. You may just not have known it. I'm going to jump to the file that we were working in before and just pick out a door here. Now when I select this door, as I've mentioned before, I don't really want that door. I don't like the glass door. Is that what I put on all of these, is glass doors? Maybe, I guess it is. Anyway, when I select, you know where I bet you there isn't a glass door, is the janitor's closet. Okay, so when I select my single flush door, this is a door family. So this is the main, this is what you would consider the parent. Okay, this is the mom and the dad of the family. So when I hit this drop down, you'll notice underneath the single flush I have all these different siblings or types. So these are what are considered predetermined types by Revit. And we know by going to type properties, which is going to properties and then hitting edit type, that we can create our own custom siblings, right? This doesn't have to be exactly what the ones that Revit gives us. If we go to type properties, we can adjust these values, but remember, it's always important to duplicate first, because if I change a value in here, it's going to be named improperly, possibly. For instance, if I said I wanted a door that was 37 inches wide, a custom door, and I come down here and change this to 37 inches, it's going to change the door width to 37 inches. However, the actual door child, the sibling of this single flush family, is going to say 36 on the name, but it's going to read 37 in here. So it's very important that whenever you change a type, you duplicate the family first. And we talked about that, I think, in the first video. But this is where the type parameters come from. Basically, Revit or Autodesk was nice enough to go through and set all of these different, standard door sizes up, because these are the door sizes that are used frequently. However, if you wanted to make a custom door, you would adjust the type properties and duplicate it. What we're going to look at today is how we set up these types underneath of a family. That way, if we want, for instance, a table that can be adjusted real time, meaning I don't need to create a similar table every time that the dimensions change, I can just create parametric data and set up a model that can be adjusted easily while it's inside of Revit. For example, the predefined sizes here, you'll notice change the door sizes. Back to the idea of the 37-inch door. If I duplicate a door that's similar, let's say that I had a 36 by 84, I duplicate that, I rename it as a 37-inch door. Okay, now keep in mind this is only the name of the family type. Notice down here the width's still 3 feet or 36 inches. So if I rename this as 37 inches, I need to change this to 37 inches. Okay, now the door is actually 37 inches wide. I've created my own type of the single flush family. Okay, so after I do that, I hit OK, and believe it or not, this door actually grew a ½ inch in both directions. And you'll notice that it's of the 37-inch by 84-inch type, and 37 inches now added to the type list here. So we're going to look at how to do this predetermined using the family editor. We're going to set up a list of these sizes to use. However, it's important to realize that you can adjust these also, obviously, after the family's been created, but you can create types just to get you started. So we're not going to use the refrigerator because the refrigerator is a little more complicated. So we're going to take baby steps into this process, and we're going to start off with a simple, as simple as it can get. We're going to start off with a coffee table with 4 legs and a tabletop. And from there we'll develop into more and more advanced types. So to do this, we're going to go to the family editor just like we create any other family. So I'm going to go to New Family, and because I'm creating a table, I'm going to go ahead and select Furniture. It's good to keep this under the proper heading, because later we'll find out we can turn on and off things by the type, not the type necessarily that I'm looking for, but the host type of the family. So I'm going to select Furniture for this. Okay, when I select Furniture, I'm given a blank screen to start with. So remember, from the refrigerator, what we're going to do is jump straight into reference planes. And since I talked about this in the last video in detail, I'm pretty much just going to speed through this process just to do it. So feel free to pause the video as you go along, or as necessary. So remember, the skeleton is the important part of these families. Alright, so I'm going to just pick some random dimensions here. Going to make this about 18 inches off of the ground. So the top of my table will be 18 inches off the ground. So I'm dragging the witness line down, change this to 18 inches. If this guy gets in your way, you grab this little circle here and slide it over. Okay, so the difference between what we did last week and this week is we're going to measure these out. That's going to be 18 inches. Whoops, I already have one down there. Okay, this is going to be my 18 inches. The difference is I'm not going to pin these. Okay, I'm going to leave them unpinned. So this is going to be 18 inches, and I'm going to name this, remember, top of table, so we have to name our planes. Okay, so that's the top of my table. I want my, these dimensions can change, so I'm just going to rough these in. Like I said, this is actually, if my tabletop's set to 18 inches, I'm just going to go ahead and make this 17 inches. So that's 17 inches from the ground. Okay, and this plane's going to be bottom of tabletop. Be as descriptive as you can, remember, because when it comes to modeling, it will save you some time. Now, I'm just going to do a 2 foot by 2 foot coffee table for now. So for my planes, remember, I usually go from the center line, so I'll do 12 inches there. And this will be the left side of my table, left side. And this will be the inside of my legs, so I want my leg to be starting off 3 inches from this line. So if I want it to be from the center line, I need to drag that dot over and change this to 3 inches. Whoops, I need to change that to 12 minus 3 inches, 9 inches. There we go. So this is the right side of the left leg. Always remember where you're working. Notice I'm in the front view, so when I draw this line this way, that's why this plane can be named right side of left leg, because I'm looking at the table from what would be, I'm considering the front. So because I'm looking at it from the front, this is going to be the right side of the left leg. This center line represents the center of the table, so everything over here is considered left side, everything over here is considered right side. And again, because I want an overall table size of 24, I'm cutting it in half, 12 inches both sides. And I'm not pinning it, remember, for this. You'll see why. So remember, I need to drag this extension line over. Now I can do 9 inches here. And this is going to be the right side. And this will be the left side of right leg. Alright. So I'm going to jump to my right view and continue the process. I need a few more reference planes here. What am I looking for? Reference planes. Home tab. Reference plane. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, the front or the top of the table is obviously still here. If I select it, top of table still exists from the front view. This time I'm looking at the table from the right side. So if I'm looking at it from the right side, this would be the front of the table, this side would be the back of the table. So I'll go ahead and add the 12 inches I need here. And again, I need to change this witness line here. They're getting overlap there, so I'm getting a little sloppy in there. Let's start deleting some of these to get those out of the way, and I'll try this again here. There we go. Oops, put 9 feet in there, 9 inches. Alright. And this would be considered back and front leg. Legs, oh, that'll be plural is the word that I'm looking for. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. That would be plural because the front of both legs, since this table is symmetrical, with this reference plane will take care of both of those. And this is going to be the front of the table. Alright. Almost done. I know it's a pain to set these up, but it definitely saves you time in the end. I can promise you that if you skip this step, you're going to get yourself into trouble. So this is going to be the back of the table. Front of back legs. Alright, so we're good to go now. We've created the skeleton. You can see, like I said, it's just going to be a really generic basic coffee table. We're going to have a thickness of a tabletop here resting on 4 solid square legs. So nothing fancy for this. I just want to introduce the concept, and then you can experiment on your own, obviously with your assignment, on creating something with a little more meaning. But again, I just wanted to introduce the basics. So now that we have this geometry created, we're going to actually go, I guess this is more reference geometry than geometry, not to confuse you, since it doesn't really have any dimension. I'm going to go up to family types. Under this family types, under the tab up here, you're going to see a box that looks like this with the dialog name of family types. You can see there's family types here and there's parameters here. We're not quite ready to create the family types yet. We still have to create parameters for these family types. So I'm going to hit add here. Okay, by default you don't need to change anything in here for how we're going to create this. We just need to give each one a name. For instance, we need the table height is one parameter that we want to be able to be adjusted. Okay, I'm going to hit an add again, and then I'm going to do table width. Okay, the discipline and all this stuff, like I said, is irrelevant for what we're doing. The type of parameter that all of these are going to be a length. They're going to be some sort of measurement. If you're interested in the extra information, definitely check out your book or other resources. But for a simple family, the default settings, like I said, these are going to be fine how they are. So I'm going to have table width. Table depth might be another thing that I want to change. So basically I'm saying anything that I add here, I want to be able to be adjusted by the user in the end. So remember how we were changing, or I was changing the door values, changing the width and so on and so forth real time. This allows the user to easily change the sizes of those families that you create. So we need to add a couple more here. There's the tabletop width. And leg width. One more, leg depth. That way, if they don't want it to be a perfect square, they can maybe make rectangular legs. So out of these 6 parameters, these are the options that are going to be available for the user to modify. So with these added, I can hit OK here. Now I'm ready to create some geometry. So I'm going to jump to my front view. If you remember, you go to your Home tab, and we're going to create some extrusions. And the second that you select that, it's best, since we set up our work planes, to set your work plane. Notice by default it would have us drawing in the center. We actually want to draw on the front of table. Hit OK. And I'm going to draw the tabletop first. I'm going to just use the rectangle tool to make my life easier. Now this is probably the most important step. When we dimension this, we're going to dimension the grid line, so it's extremely, extremely important that you lock every single line that touches a grid line. Okay, because this is going to depend on how this geometry changes. We're going to measure the grid lines. We're not going to measure the actual geometry. So when Revit changes a grid line, you want to make sure these objects are locked to that grid line. If they're not locked, the object's not going to change when you change the dimension. So in order for anything to change, you need to absolutely positively make sure any change you make is locked to a grid line. Okay, those are all locked, so I can check mark that as okay. And if you remember, because we created our geometry, we can jump to the right side now and just drag this arrow over to the back of it. And remember, after I do that, I'm going to lock it by selecting this lock. Okay, that locks the back of this extrusion to this grid line. These other ones are automatically locked because I locked them during sketch, so this is the only check you should have to do when altering this. Okay, so I'll jump back to the front view. I'm going to delete this guy, I'm not sure why it was there. And the next, I'm going to create the legs here, so I'll go to extrusion. Remember, you can do this from any view that you want, you don't have to do it from the front view. I'll probably switch a couple times here. So I'll lock all 4 of these after it's complete. Okay, even though the lock's over here, it's just saying lock to these reference lines or reference planes. So even though this lock isn't right here, it's still serving the same purpose. So you need to make sure you get all 4 of them. They might be hidden somewhere. Okay, check that. Go to the right view. This one went a little too far there, so I'm going to actually drag this back to here and lock it. Alright, so we'll go back to the front view. Now you might be tempted to use a mirror, and that's fine if you want to mirror this over to the other side. You can do that. You just need to make sure you lock stuff. So when I mirror this, it mirrors this over to the other side. However, I still need to go into the sketch. I'm going to go to Edit Extrusion to make sure I get a hold of these lines. And when I'm in Edit Extrusion, I'm going to use my Align tool to select the axis or the reference plane and then the line and lock these individually. Remember, select the object you want to align to first. So I'm selecting the reference plane first and then locking. I got that one already. Okay, so after those are locked, I can check mark back out. Now, with this being the front view, I still need to jump to the right view and lock these to the grids because they're not locked. So basically the easiest way is to push this back a little bit and then re-pull it back, and that'll give you the chance to lock it. So you're basically pulling it off of the, I don't need to pull it off this front plane there, but I'll go ahead and do it, and locking that. So you're basically pulling it off of the grid line and then pulling it back. That way Revit automatically gives you the chance to snap. Alright. And again, you shouldn't have any dimensions right now. Any dimensions you can just delete. So I'll jump to a 3D view here to kind of check it out. Where it is it? There it is. Alright, there we go. So this view types in wireframe, you can change that to hidden, or you can change it to shaded, whatever you prefer. I don't recommend wireframe necessarily, it can get kind of confusing. So I'll change that to hidden line for now. Okay, so we have 2 more to go. We'll draw these next ones from the top view. Alright, so I'll go to plan view, and what we're going to do is do an extrusion, and I'm going to set my work plane to the bottom of the tabletop. That'll allow me to draw this on the bottom of the tabletop there, extrude down to the floor, and I'm going to lock it. This is probably the best view to lock these because you don't have to worry about it. The only extrusion you have to lock it to is the reference to the ground. So this will work out nice. And to show you that you can actually have 2 extrusions in the same file there, I'll go ahead and drop this one in the same one. Now these, obviously any changes we make, these will be connected, so you have to be careful when you do stuff like this. It's best to keep them separate, but just to show you. That'll extrude both of them in the wrong direction, which is to be expected, no big deal. We just select that and lock it. Okay, and because it was one extrusion, both legs will come with each other, and one lock is necessary due to the fact that these legs were both belong to the same extrusion. There we go. There's our table. Pretty nice. So go ahead and catch up. When we come back, we'll add the parametric equations to it and get this thing ready to go for types. Alright, let's go ahead and add the parametric data. That's going to drive this table. We've already taken the time to set up our parameters up here. Your values probably say 0. Go ahead and 0 these out here to match yours. Oops. Let me just get rid of these guys here. There we go. So your value should look something like this. You should have all these values in here. Now we need to assign these to the dimensions. To do that, we're going to go to the front view. Actually, I apologize. We're going to go to the reference view to start this off. Really, you can do it in whatever order you want to. I just like to start at the top. So I'm going to go to Home, and I'm going to go to Annotate. I'm going to do Aligned, and I'm going to measure this distance here, and I'm going to measure this distance here. And then I hit Escape until these turn black. I'll select the first one, and now because this is the top view, this area here looking this way is the front, so this would be the depth. This dimension represents the depth of the table. So in my labels under the properties here, after I select this dimension, you'll notice all those parameters that we set up here are located inside this drop down. So I'm going to locate table depth. When I select that, Revit's going to give it automatic tag with the dimension that's in there. So that's kind of the effect that we're going for. This is the table width. Whoops, table width. Okay, notice here that we're dimensioning the reference planes. We're not dimensioning the geometry directly. And that's why it's important that you always lock your lines and extrusions to these lines, else when this dimension changes, the grid lines or the grid planes will change, but the geometry won't change. So it's important that you lock everything. Alright, so table width, table depth, that's good. We need to add the depths of all the legs. Make sure you include all of the legs. So I'm going to go to Annotate, Align. I'm going to get this one here, and this one. And this one. Alright, turn all those black. Space these by dragging the dimension line. You can line them up if you want to. They're not going to appear on your drawing, so you don't have to worry about that. They'll disappear when you bring it in to Revit. So this would be the leg depth. So under label, I'll set this to leg depth. This is leg depth as well. And since those are running each other, I'll stagger them. You can dimension these legs in any view that you want to. It doesn't have to be the top view. I just chose the top view, like I said, because usually that's my favorite view to work in. I get as much done in the top view as possible. And these are going to be the leg widths. Now we need to go to a front view or a side view and define a height. So I can go to, let's see, Annotate, Aligned. Little guy in there. I need to click in the center there somewhere to get it to stick. Alright, so this is obviously going to be the table height. And this is going to be the tabletop width. And we already dimensioned everything else in the other views. So this should be good enough to drive this table. So I'm going to just go to a 3D view here. And I'm going to go to my family types. Now you should see all of these should have a dimension in it. There should no longer be any zeros. If you have zeros here, it means you missed one. So if there's any zeros, go back and add what's missing there. Okay, so let's experiment with some of these here. Leg width. So that's going to be the width of the leg here. If I change this to, let's say, 5 inches and hit apply, you'll notice that the table grew, the legs grew 5 inches, all of them, because we assigned that width to all those grid lines. So if I wanted it to be 5 by 5, you change this to 5 and hit apply, and you'll see that the legs grew in this direction. If I wanted my tabletop to be thicker, I could adjust my tabletop width to let's say 2.5 inches. Hit apply. And the table actually grew down. If I wanted it to be higher now, I would add that 2 inches to here, so that would be 26 inches. Or I'm sorry, that should be the table height. This was what, 24 inches. Table height should be, let's say, 2 feet. So you'll see the table height grows. So using these dimensions, we're able to now override the dimensions we've created before, and that's thanks to adding those labels and setting up the parameters here. And once we set up the parameters, remember we assign those to the dimensions that we want to drive. And then we can make those changes here. And then to take it a step further, we can create families. Now if you remember, like the door, there were certain doors. We're going to create certain tables for this. We'll create 3 of them or so. And this one will be 24 inches by 24 inches by, we'll just say 24 inches. We'll make it a cube. And I'll hit OK. Alright, now I need to make sure this agrees. So my table height needs to be 24 inches. Table depth needs to be 24 inches. And my width needs to be 24 inches. And I'll make this a more realistic width of 1 inch. And my legs much thinner. You know, 24 inches is kind of high for a table, but we'll roll with it. Leg width of 2 inches. And 2 inches. Leg depth 2 inches. There we go, little skinny guy, skinny legs there. So that's our 24 by 24 by 24. What if we wanted to include something different? What if we wanted a different family type? Well, we would come in and say, well, this time I want it to be 18 inches by 18 inches by 18 inches. Okay, so we have width, depth, height. So this is the width, depth, height. So there's our 18. Our 24 stays in here. There's our 24, but if I adjust these now to 18 inches. Hit apply. It looks like we're not sticking on the edge there. We can fix that. That's no big deal. But notice that the 24 sticks with its values as well. So the 24 still has its values under the type, and the 18s have their values. So you can set these predetermined heights. Let's take a look here and see why we're not sticking to this right side. I'm going to go to the right side view here. So it looks to me like the table top itself is not set to not locked to the correct plane. If you can see that, what's happening, as you can see, is the leg here, this leg is somehow attached to that plane, so it moves, but the tabletop and the back side of this table does not move. So I'm going to go to the top view here. And I'm also going to go ahead and change it back to a family that works. I'm going to change this to 24 by 24, and I'll hit apply so that I know that at least my dimensions, everything's in line where it's supposed to be. And I know when I change this dimension, I know that this leg moves, but the tabletop doesn't. So I need to drag this back and re-drag this up and make sure that's locked. That's the first thing. So I'm going to go to a 3D view and see if that corrected at least part of it. So it's good to troubleshoot this stuff in a systematic order, so you're not just running circles around yourself here. If I could remember how to orbit, that would be great. I'm orbiting by holding down Shift and my mouse track wheel, holding it in at the same time. So I'm going to here, change this back to the other guy. There we go. So you can see that the importance of getting stuff to lock it. That one part of the table wasn't locked to that grid line, so it was messing up everything else. So if you get bugs like that, just go back and make sure that the objects that aren't moving are not locked, or are locked. They need to be locked. So there we got the next one. We can create our final third one here. So I'm creating a new family here, and I'll name this one 15 inch by 15 inches. Alright, and I need to make sure I changed my values here. Tabbing over here. 3. 1 foot 3. And one more even further there. Okay, so now I have my three families that I can cycle through here. A lot of work up front, yes, but if you plan on using this table in a bunch of different drawings, this will save you time. I know it doesn't make sense just yet, but it will. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load this family that we've just created into a project. Have a project open for that to work. And I'm just going to put it somewhere here, not in the bathroom. I'll just put the table in the middle of this room. And we'll look at it here further. So if I select my family, you'll notice it's named family 2 because that's how I saved it. But you'll also notice that I have that nice collection of the different sizes. And notice that it changes real time by changing these family types. So that's the beauty in it. If I needed a different size table for different drawings, I can import this one family here and have all these different sizes the same way Revit has their different types. So that's how these are generated, is by creating types in parametric data. Okay, so go ahead and catch up there, and we'll come back and keep looking at some more details here. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. That's about the extent that we're going to cover family types. We're not going to get into any more details necessarily in this lecture or this example, because basically anything beyond this is out beyond the scope of this class. Basically what we're looking for is to introduce you to the concept, and from this you should be able to take on any parametric data that you have. I mean, I realize it looks extremely simple, and you're asking yourself, well, how am I supposed to do other complex things? And the question is, or the answer is, basically, you do the same thing, but you usually end up with a lot more of these parameters. And you put a parameter to everything. And by doing that, that basically allows the user to manipulate the family however they desire. So you're basically, the amount of parameters that you give them, the more options they have. So obviously we could have left out certain options here, as well as the tabletop and the leg thicknesses and so on and so forth. The more that you add, the more flexibility that the user has. So we're not really going to cover any more than this. Your homework for this week will have, you will have to complete the 3 tables shown here in this video, but there will be additional stuff other than that. So you'll have the 3 tables, so don't put that on the back burner for too long, but you will be expected to complete the 3 tables, but that will be the extent of the family types. You won't have to go find your own family to create. Usually when we create families in the field, especially interior design, there are one-shot deals like the refrigerator that we created. We'll spend a little extra time in the detail of this because it has importance. We don't necessarily need to create types for this refrigerator because usually it's client specific, to where we only need this refrigerator for that client and that client only. Maybe some other time we'll need to use this same refrigerator for another client, but it's rare that we need to create family types for a refrigerator like this in our field. Now it's going to depend whichever firm that you end up working for, how they go about doing their Revit families and how they organize their Revit library, but you'll know in advance. And there's plenty of resources out there that would take it further than I have today. So like I said, today that's about the extent of the family types that we're going to go into. Obviously if you have questions about that, feel free to contact me anytime. So what I want to talk about now is actually the wall types in Revit and how we can modify those. Alright, so the walls that we've been using up until this point have been editable. Or I'm sorry, the families that we've been using up to this point have been editable. The walls cannot be editable because they're system families. And we know that system families are predefined. They're kind of like Autodesk's building blocks for Revit. So in order to actually create or modify walls, we actually only need to create types and modify the types. So let's go ahead and take a look at this wall here. And this is just a project that we've been working on the 3rd floor there, and it's just a random wall here. When I select this wall, if you remember, we used basic wall interior 5-inch partitions 2 hours rated. 2 hour means fire rating. That's a fire rated wall. So when would we need to adjust the wall types? When you think about it, actually there's a lot of times we would need to adjust the wall types. The one that I can think of right off the bat is in the studio at school. When you first enter the building and you walk down the main hallway, the walls are composed of drywall for the most part along the bottom, but then there's a transom, or like a light at the top that is about 12 inches high of some sort of translucent plastic, maybe freeform or some other corrugated plastic, but there is a special wall detail there. And obviously Revit isn't going to have that detail, so it's important that you learn how to create your own wall types when the situation arises. Now, it's not going to work so well in your favor for details necessarily, but for elevations it'll definitely save a lot of time and make things look how they're supposed to look. So in order to mess with walls, we need to select a wall that we're interested in and go to Edit Type. And remember, anytime that we edit a type, immediately we should duplicate it and rename it for whatever we're going to create here. So we're just going to create something special. So you would want to name this something a little more familiar, obviously, if you're working in the field. For this example, I'm just going to name it something like Special Wall Detail. Okay, now that I've renamed it, I can come in here and change the structure of the wall. So I select, let me go back there just so you see where I went there. I went to the structure, I went to edit, and once we're in here we can zoom in to the wall a little bit closer. Now this is a wall section, so you can see the corresponding blue highlighting is corresponding to the selected object over here in your layers. So these are the wall layers, and this is starting at the exterior side and working down to the interior side of the wall, with the middle being the metal stud structure that you see here. So a 2-hour wall has 2-hour rating wall partition has 2 5/8-inch pieces of drywall on both sides of metal studs, and that probably some insulation in there, which we're not worried about. So in order to create the wall we're interested in, we're going to have to do some modification to this wall. Obviously, the wall that is in the hallway isn't necessarily the same wall. So what we're going to do is actually delete these outer pieces of gypsum board, or drywall as we know it. So I'm going to hit delete and delete, and that'll get us down to 2 pieces of drywall, here and here, and the metal structure. And that gives us a total wall thickness of 3 3/4, which is kind of thin, but I believe the walls there are actually thinner, so I think we're doing okay here. It's important that you keep your eye on this number, even if you have to fudge these numbers sometimes. It's not recommended, but you definitely want to achieve the actual wall thickness here, or everything's going to be thinner than it's supposed to be. So these all add up to this number. You can see the thicknesses here, if you took the time to add this up, would equal 3 3/4. Now the sample height is just an arbitrary number. For the view, it's good to keep this to what we're going to use, like 10 feet, I think, is the walls there. So I'm actually going to OK out of here just to get an idea of how high these walls are. And we'll do that by going to a elevation. Actually, I'll just drop a elevation view in here now to check this out to see what the actual height's going to be. Just, you know, I'm not going to name this elevation for now. I just need it for building purposes. And I'm going to select the border and make it a little bit larger so I can see where the floor starts. So this is my crop, and I can turn this on and off down here, but I need it still, so I'm going to leave it on. And we can see that the wall to the bottom of the deck there is 11 feet. So we're going to keep that in mind when we're constructing our wall type. Okay, so I'm going to go back into my special wall type here. I'm going to hit Edit Type, and I'm going to change structure. So I hit Edit Structure. I'm going to change my sample height to 11 feet. Alright, and that's good. Now I need to add those plastic lights or transoms that I was talking about at the top, and I think they're about 1 foot. I'm not exact, so that means that from the ground up, it needs to be at that about 10 feet. So what I'm going to do is split the drywall, and I'm going to use the split region to do that. Now, using this method, we're only going to be able to maintain a certain thickness here. So if we wanted the thickness to change, for instance, the 3-form is probably only going to be a 1/4 inch thick, whereas the drywall is going to be 5/8. So there should technically be a step down right here where the thickness changes. You're not going to be able to do that unless you use a stacked wall, and this is not a stacked wall example. This is just going to be for elevation purposes. We want this line to show in the elevation to show the difference between materials. Again, if you wanted to do more detailed for, especially if you're going to do wall sections, you would definitely need to do a stacked wall to do the change in thickness. But again, we're not worried about that in this example. A similar thickness would be fine. So I'm going to leave a foot at the top, so I'm going to unselect split region and select modify. And I'm going to come up here, zoom in nice and close, and select that line. I'm going to change this to 10 feet because I want, from the ground up, I want it to start, well, it's actually probably going to be less than that, assuming that it's going to have a drop down. The ceiling's going to drop down, but we'll keep it at 10 feet for right now. The bottom of the deck is right here at 11 feet, which means there's going to be a drop ceiling that comes down for plumbing and electrical work, which is probably going to be about 1.5 to 2 feet. So really the ceiling is going to drop down here, so really this line needs to be further down. We'll calculate that here in a second. Okay, so I've got the 2 split regions here. I need to make sure this is 10 feet on the other side as well. There we go. For some reason I'm getting just to warn you, the wall assembly editor is extremely difficult to work with. It is not my favorite thing in the world. I'll just do 12 from here. Actually, you can't do, you want to make your measurements from the bottom because for whatever reason, Revit will not, Revit bases its dimensions off of the bottom, meaning I have a sample wall height of 11, so no matter what I do to this wall, I need to measure from the bottom. So I need to get this dimension to flip, and I need this 2 to be not there, unless I can change that to a 0, which is not likely. We'll try. That worked. Good. Okay, so I've got that lined up with that. That was the primary objective there. So I can unselect modify there. For some reason it takes forever to fade out. I don't know what the deal is with that. Again, this must just be something that Autodesk throws together at the end. Alright. Don't quite understand why. Okay, so now that we've split these regions, you'll notice when I select the layers, they're all still on the single layers. I need to create additional layers for the 3-form. So I'm going to go to the top here and select insert, and I'm going to change the finish to finish 1, and I'm going to select a category and 3-form in my materials. So you might not have this. This was added earlier in the video series. If you remember, to add a material, basically you find something that's similar, and select it and hit duplicate and rename it 3-form. Let's go ahead and just I'll create a I'm going to select plastic. I'm going to select this and create carbon fiber since it's somewhat similar, and I'll name this plastic. Actually, I won't name it plastic, I'll name it composite carbon fiber, maybe mesh or something. And you'll notice that creates a new material, and I can adjust the appearance of that material here under graphics. And we created a 3-form earlier. If you don't have 3-form, you might go ahead and add it in there. We're going to use that for this example, so I'll hit OK. And that'll drop the 3-form material in there. And I need one more for the other side of the wall. So I'll change this to finish. Now, these have to do with the orientation of the wall join when we do a floor plan. However the wall butts together, the orientation of this depends on the final orientation. Now there's a good explanation of this in your book in the chapter 13 that will explain to you exactly what these settings do. I'm not going to go into detail with that here for time's sake, but if you check out chapter 13, you'll be able to find out more about what these layers actually mean. So again, I'm going to select freeform for here. Alright, so you should have your two layers here. Now it comes down to assigning it. So you select the layer that you want to assign first. I want to assign this finish, so I select this finish, and I do assign layers, and I want this to be freeform, so I select that. I've got that on the wrong side. This freeform and this wall, notice if I select this wall, this side selects. So this freeform needs to be on this side over here. So I'll just select the freeform again and then select that. And I'll go over to the other gypsum board and then the other freeform and select that. So there, I have freeform there, gypsum there, metal stud in the middle, gypsum, and freeform. So you want to make sure these are all in line where they need to be. Now this gray means that they're locked together, so like I said before, we're not going to be able to change the thickness of these. You would have to use a stacked wall to do that. And again, your book has a good example of a stacked wall. I'm not going to go into the details of that either. Just simply beyond the scope of this video. So I'm going to unselect assign layers and hit OK. There's a preview of our final wall. Hit OK again. Go to my elevation view here, and you'll notice if I bring this back to where it's supposed to be, you will notice this line here represents, it's still the wall, so this line is going to represent the separation between the gypsum board and the plastic. So you can see where if you create this wall type in advance, your elevations will show that change in material with that line, rather than having to draw that in manually on all of your elevations. By creating the walls with this wall type, you can do that. And after you've created one wall type like this, I've created this, obviously this wall should still be its original material or the original finish, and it's just drywall. But if I go back and change it to the newly created wall type, we name it special special wall detail, I think. Yeah, there we go. So there's our special wall on that. So you can always obviously change after creating wall types walls that are already created with your newly created wall types. It's the most important step probably in the whole process is when you select the initial wall type and you go in to edit its type. If you're using a system wall, you need to duplicate it first and create your new wall detail before you make any changes to the structure. If you accidentally change the wall detail or the system values, then all of your walls are going to update with the changes that you make, and that's no good. So it's absolutely, I can't stress enough, crucial for you to duplicate before you would make adjustments to a type. Alright, let's look at a few remaining things here that I want to cover. So we have a couple other videos to do, some really fun, maybe experimental stuff, some details and so forth. But I want to make sure that I cover this other information thorough before we move on. The next thing, obviously, that we need to cover that we haven't covered here would be stairs. We have nice elevator shafts here. We have no way to get from floor to floor, which is no good. So we'll take a second here to look at floors, and I also want to look at curtain walls, and that'll wrap everything up. And then next week we can talk about importing files, maybe some sweeps, and I really want to start talking about sheet setup and plotting and so forth. So we're on the home stretch here as far as adding on the final touches. So to add on stairs, like I mentioned a long time ago, we'll probably focus on these two corners, and they're much larger than they need to be. Actually, we'll use this area here for our first set of stairs. So to get started, I'm just going to hide this section in the view by elements because I don't want it to be in the way. To add stairs, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward for the most part. There are some complications that come into play, so we'll look at those areas. So I'm going to go to Home, over to Stairs. Now there's several different ways that you can create stairs by run, boundary, and risers. The best way to show you to start off is to just use a run. And when I click here, let me zoom in, try and zoom over while staying in the command here. Okay, so I just clicked a start point there, and as I go over, you'll see there's 7 risers. There's a risers created counting up and a number remaining counting down. And this is Revit's way of basically calculating the amount of stairs that you need to the next level. One drawback to this is, one, you need to be aware of how high you can go before you need to have some kind of landing, and that's going to be based off of code. And I imagine you're not going to be able to do a straight stretch like this, so you're probably going to need some kind of setback. So I'm going to just click there, and I'll start this other one. Oops, didn't get it quite there. This is one of the drawbacks that I was referring to. So I've got 10 risers created, and I have 11 remaining to the next floor. You know, let me just go ahead and do a complete run here, just so I can take a look at what's happening before I move on. So I'll check that. Well, before I check that, I'm going to look at the properties. Again, you know, anything that's green is related to stairs, so you can see that there's some options here for the stairs that we could set. Again, the properties are also always available. So you can see the base level is on the 3rd floor, and the top level is on the 4th floor. So if we wanted to run a stairs to actually go through multiple levels, we could make those adjustments here. Again, that's unlikely, especially when you're dealing with a commercial place that has code. A lot of times you'll see the up text and the down arrows. You'll see that on floor plans. This has to do with the graphics of that showing up. So if you didn't want your up arrows to be there in the end result, you would set this up. The stairway width can be set up in the properties. The desired number of treads and risers. So this is where all the calculation comes into play. It's set to 21 by now, and you can see the grayed out areas are kind of like what everything's based off of. So Revit is calculating all this information based on a riser height of looks like almost 7 inches, and a tread depth can be adjusted, and right now it's at 11 inches. So this is close to what would be considered acceptable for code, I believe 711. So the actual number is hit to the desired number there. So if I wanted my treads to be different, meaning if I wanted the tread depth to change, I could adjust this number, and that would adjust this. Now again, I have to caution you that you can get yourself into trouble as far as building codes go, but as long as you are sticking to the code, you should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and check mark this as okay. There's the up arrow I was referring to in the break line, which is pretty much standard drafting procedure. So that's good, that it automatically does that. I'm going to flip that using this. Notice I select this arrow key to flip the stairs, and I'm going to put it up against the wall using my align tool. Maybe. Try that again. I've got that was actually the railing that I snapped over there. The railing, notice, is separate. It's a separate piece, so you have to make sure you get a hold of that. So notice the stairs don't take up quite much space as we have here. I made this room super huge, this building. So I'm going to just drop a view in here. I'll do a camera. There we go. It's a nice shot showing you the stairs. A couple of things to note here. Again, this run is a little longer than it should be. The hand railings can be adjusted. Again, they're separate elements. If I select on it, you'll see that I have properties for just the railings themselves. They're actually a family. So there's some options here for other generic. If I wanted pipes, for example, I could change it to more modern look there. If I didn't want the stiles and rails there, I could have different kind of allotments there. This stairway should probably be a little bit wider, maybe 4 feet. See, that got wider, but it got wider in the wrong direction, so I just need to go to floor plan here and do another alignment. Because I didn't lock that, it's gonna move. I should have locked it to the wall. What am I looking for? Align. Select this first would help. And there we go, and I'll lock it. Alright, now go to my 3D view. I'll rename this 3D view so I remember what it is for later. I'll just call it stairs. Alright, so that's the first set of stairs. Now the stairs isn't gonna actually cut an opening for you in the top. You're gonna do that through modification of your floor. And what I mean is I would have to go to the 4th floor. There's the stairs poking through there. I would have to hit tab here until I came across my floor and then select it. Edit the boundary. And this is a little sloppy. Obviously I'm a little close to that wall there. I'll fix that, but you would need to create an opening here that you could go through. I'm going to have to get rid of this line. I'm going to have to trim that line, so I'll use the split tool, and I'll use the trim tool after that. Alright, so if I go back to my camera view, you'll see there's that opening that I just cut in the floor. So in order to cut the opening in the floor, you basically just create the shape that you want in the floor above it, and that'll allow you to create whatever opening you want. I could come as far back as I want. I would have to add railings obviously on the top if I was going to do that, but that allows you to pretty much place this thing wherever you want. Now it's a little too close to that wall at the top, so I'm going to make that modification now. Oops, got a hold of the railing there. The best way to do this is probably I need to unlock this from the wall and annotate with a dimension from there to there, and I'll just make this something like something like 4 feet. Give me enough space. I'll go ahead and make it 5 feet. Alright. And I want to bump this thing out. So I'll select the stairs again and do an align. Looks like I got the railing again. No, it's there. Okay. Well, no, that's not right. I'm going to turn on a hidden line down here so I can, or wireframe so I can see that a little better. It's hiding back there. There we go. So you can turn on and off wireframe and hidden line to see through stuff when stuff's hidden behind stuff, like the wall was there. Now let's take a look at that camera view. I can delete that dimension and go back to my stairs. And I need to adjust this so that I can see them better. And it looks like I still need to make the adjustment here to my floor. So we'll jump back to that floor there to finish this off here. Fourth floor, the floor above. I'm going to select the floor boundary again and edit that boundary. This is going to be as simple as just dragging this there and there. Alright, good. And check mark that. This time I'll hit no here. No. And I'll go to the third floor. Or no, I'm sorry, the stairs. And that opening's now correct. Again, that's a long haul up the steps. You would probably need a U-shave or something there. Look at that in the other corner. So over here in this corner, I'm going to do a different set of stairs. Okay, and basically I'm going to, let's see, I'll start the rise here. Now, when you do this part of it, notice that gap's there, and you can't start it here. It's a sweet spot that you hit here. See how that overlaps? That's no good. Center line's a little too far. Tell you what I'm going to do is actually okay, take a different approach here. So a good addition here is when you hover over stuff, it will tell you exactly what to do. You can see the points there that you need to snap. So we'll do that another shot there. There we go. So it looks like what you need to do here in this case is you want to snap at this endpoint and this midpoint, so where those two dashed lines intersect, and that'll just give you a landing there. And to be truthful with you, I wouldn't even do that, because if you want a solid landing here, I would just come over here and start over, and Revit should automatically fill that in there. And you can, after the fact, you can select this blue line. You want to make sure you select the blue line and drag that out there. You can see I've created 17. I need 4 more. This one's a little short here on the bottom, so I'll drag that until I need 1 more there. So that gives me a nice landing area here with a few steps to finish that off. And Revit has calculated, based on the information here, how many risers. So that I'll fill that in nicely. And for this one, we'll just take a look here at using, let's see, view, camera. Nice. Okay. a little more visible there. Making these stairs look grand with these perspective shots. So I'm going to rename this view stairs. And I really don't like this railing, so I'm going to change it to the pipes. I kind of like those for some reason. Alright, so as every family, believe it or not, we're under the stair of 711 there. There's other families of stairs that we could switch through here. You can see that that fills in the bottom, concrete stairs. Okay, that's if we edit the type, not 3D view, you have to make sure you select stairs first. You can edit the type just as any other family, but again, it's important that if you edit it, you duplicate this if you're going to create your own. So I'll say this is, you know, Jason's stairs or whatever, but you would probably want to be a little more specific if other people will work on this. Now in here I can adjust the calculation rules on how the actual rise to run is calculated. This is the Revit's brain as far as these numbers go. This is how the numbers are achieved. This is the numbers it uses. Usually you don't want to veer away from this too much, simply because stairs are a big deal when it comes to code. You can adjust whether it's monolithic, they're exterior or interior stairs. You know, this has to do with the graphics, the symbol, and the break line. If you wanted to change the material on the nose and the tips, the nosing profile, go ahead and zoom in here. Okay, the nosing profile is the end of the stair tread here. So if I go back into this type, I can look at some of these things here. See where'd that go. Nosing profile here. See if we have a looks like we would need to add some profiles if we wanted to change the nosing type. Right now it's just square. Sometimes you see bull nose or rounded or so. The maximum riser height is the maximum amount this can go. Riser thickness would be like the piece of wood behind there. Stringers are along the bottom. That's pretty much the structure, the support. So these things can all be adjusted as long as you duplicate first. You can experiment with what you want here. Slanted. Gives us a different effect there. So you can experiment with that kind of on your own. The railings, again, are a separate family, so obviously we can edit the type for these as well. It's important, again, if you edit this, to duplicate it first, or you're going to overwrite the handrail type. And that's not good, because you won't have the default anymore. Alright, so that's basically the extent of what you need to know for stairs. There are obviously custom stairs that you can create with different shapes. If we go back to stairs here, ramps work the same way as stairs. If I wanted to create something more custom, I can sketch the boundary separate. So you can see you could do ovals. The boundary in this image that just came down is actually the green line. So if you wanted to do something similar to that, we could select boundary here, and we could draw a circle here. A line up to there. And I'd use my trim tool here. Delete this. And then I would need to add risers. see how they look, what theirs look like here. Oh, it looks like I forgot my middle pieces there. Whoops. Need to make sure I select boundary. I need to close this in with two paths there. Rough this in for now. Alright. This is way thin. Obviously this is thinner than I would need. Let me go ahead and clean this up. This will be 3 feet. I imagine this isn't going to like it, but I'll try. I'm not going to mess up my arc at the top. Nope, it held it. Good. And I'll just drag this up to there. So, and then I'll add my riser separate. You can see every time I do, every time I create one here, it's dropping the amount that I need to actually create. So you would have to go through here and create this custom. So you can see like the square staircases, like these guys are a lot easier to create. I imagine you could probably speed this process up some, but just to show you the I'm going to have some wonky stairs here. Looks like some kind of gaudy stuff or something. Ooh, almost planned this perfect. Yeah, I'm keeping track of how many I need here. I only need one more. I'll just make this guy real skinny. Where's my oh, it doesn't like these boundaries down here. Alright, so let's take a look at this guy, this beast of a stairway here. Yeah, looks like the railings need some work. There's an issue here with this back railing. But you get the idea as far as the custom stairs go. If you needed custom shapes, you can definitely do it. It's just more of a hassle, like anything custom. I'm not sure why the handrail is not. I'm not going to go into that just now. It might just be because that arch is so steep. There are a lot of different possibilities for that, but you could go back and edit that. There we go. That cleaned it up. I think that arc was just a little too steep. This would need to just be adjusted. It's no big deal. Alright, so that's the custom stairs. One last thing to cover here, and that'll be it for this video. And that would be curtain walls. For example, if we get rid of this wall, I'm going to just split this. Oh, you know, I think I'm going to go over to the other side. I like these stairs. Nope, not big enough. No, that's alright, we'll stick with it. So I'm just going to go back to home and I'm going to go to wall. And curtain walls are actually under the wall system here, all the way should be at the bottom. Curtain wall 1. Just like any regular wall, I'm going to draw across here. Alright. And let's see, where's my camera? I'm going to camera stairs. I'm going to select that and just hit show camera. Okay, good. I wanted to make sure my camera was on the other side of the curtain wall there so we can take a look at it when we need to. So that, you can see that transparent wall is now added. However, most curtain walls have a grid. So to add that grid to this special room here, since we're quarantining the stairs, we go back to the Home tab. One thing I want to check first is that wall looks like it's kind of high, so I'm going to select this wall and make sure the base constraint, the top constraint, is up to level 4, and it is. It's actually cutting through the floor there. So I would need to do a top offset of however thick my floor was, 6 inches. Negative 6 inches. How thick is, no, maybe it was 8 inches. That should be a lot closer. It definitely needs to be negative. I just don't want it to cut through the floor like it's cutting through there, so I'm giving it an offset here at the top. I'm going to change this to 12. There we go. Now we have that line at the top there that I was looking for. Okay, so I need to create a elevation of this room as well. So I'm going to drop in an elevation marker by going to View, Elevation, make sure that's set on Interior, and I'm going to name this elevation, let's see, I need back to the 4th floor. View name, I'm going to change this to curtain wall, and that'll update the elevation there. Remember, anytime you want to go to that elevation, you can double click on the triangle there. I'm on the 4th floor. How do I get on the 4th floor there? Alright, so I'm going to delete this guy and this guy and go back to the 3rd floor where I was supposed to be. I'm going to add another elevation in this floor. I apologize. Somebody should have told me I was doing something wrong. It's getting late. Alright, so there is the curtain. I'm going to hide this in this view as well. And I'm going to select that and go to the properties. Properties of this guy. And name this curtain. Alright. Next step. You go to the elevation here again and look at this wall. I'm going to have to make my window a little bigger here so I can see the edges of my wall. So here's the floor thickness, here's the floor above thickness. So my wall, if I tab here, is hiding. Notice if I tab through here, I can select that wall. Okay, I'm actually going to go to the Home. And under Home, you'll see there's curtain grids. I need to add curtain grid. grid there for a door maybe. Grid lines here. If I hit tab, it'll cycle to horizontal lines. So maybe I have one going across there like that. And after I do that, I can hit escape. Okay, that just gives me the grid lines, so the last step would be to add the mullions. I can select these lines that I just created to add the mullions. Alright, so that adds those nice mullions there to that casework, or glass curtain wall. So now if I go back to my camera view here, there's the mullions added onto that, to that glass wall. So it's a three-step process basically. What you need to do is, first step would be to go to the floor and select your walls, select wall, and after you select wall, select case or curtain wall and draw your wall wherever you want it. It can be any shape, it can be curved, it can be square, it can be a straight line like this, however you would draw any other wall. Once you draw that wall, you go to an elevation view. Once you go to an elevation view, you go to the Home tab and you select Curtain Grid. Now the curtain system has to do with massing, so that's something more architects and engineers would use. For what we do, curtain grid's okay. You can see that it's simple to use. It's basically as straightforward as it gets. You place your components, as this video here is kind of showing you. You can place your components or your grid lines for where your mullions need to be, and then you can place your mullions after the fact. So it's like I said, a three-step process to that. So looking at some of these mullions here, you can see there's different types of mullions, and that's again a family that could be created, or the type could be adjusted. So all of this stuff is completely customizable. It's just how much detail you're willing to put and how much time and effort you're willing to put into these things. And then again, it just comes with practice. One last thing with this curtain wall here is to throw in a door. Nothing's actually loaded here, so I'm going to go to load family, and I'm going to select doors, and I need to select curtain wall. There's a few options here to start you off, and I can place this here obviously in this view. Let's see where it went to. Probably best to keep placing this stuff in just the plan view. I accidentally placed that door on the outside there. That's not good, so we're going to delete that because that could be dangerous. I'm going to add a door. Well, oh, so the flush here, just in case that I loaded that in here. Alright, I apologize for that little inconvenience there. I'm not sure what I was thinking. In order for you to place doors and curtain walls, a couple of things need to happen. We need to do a better job of laying out the grid for one. So what I did was I went to the curtain wall here. There's a couple of things to note. If you select the mullions after they've been created, you'll see these little symbols here. If you select these symbols, it basically either makes the horizontal mullion run all the way across, or it makes the vertical butt end. I would imagine you're going to want this to be solid all the way across, like this, and your frame for the most part will probably sit on top. I guess it would probably be different from design to design, but for this I went ahead and added that little feature. And then if I wanted to modify, for example, if I wanted to modify these lines, see it, mesh button here. Delete that. I hit add and remove segments here. And select that line. There we go. Get rid of that one. Then I have this alter anything. This guy should probably be solid across there. Basically just realigning these things. I'm going to do a dimension here. I'm going to go to annotate. Once I have those 3 dimensions, I can hit equals here, and that'll make that dimension equal. That'll space these 2 equal. So you select 3 points and then hit the equals button, and that'll equal those out. Okay, now that that's actually completed, I'm going to delete these to get them out of the way. It's going to give me an error, but I can hit OK. But I don't want to hit unconstrained there. I want them to stay there. Now that I've done that, the step that I was missing here is I need to select these panels basically. So what you need to do is your door size is going to be based on your panels. So if I want double doors in here, I'll tab here until I can select that panel. And once I select that panel, I can come over here to the properties for that panel and scroll up till I find the door that I'm looking for. And that will drop that in there. So you don't actually place the door like I was trying to do. Again, I apologize, it's been a while since I've had to place doors in here, but you actually replace the components through actually selecting the panel and swapping out the panel. So I hit tab here until I find the panel and then click. And then on this door I do the same thing here. Drop that in there and that'll switch those out. So your doors are based on the size that you create your panels. So if I go to my camera view here now, oops, stairs. See those doors are added in there. So that's about it for this lesson. I think that's a good amount of information to take in. Hope it helps. Let me know if you have any questions. Send me an email, add a comment or whatever. But I hope that you will at least learn something from this video, since there's so many different aspects to Revit in this one video. We'll see you next time.